with Mr. Michael Vecchione on Tuesday, April 18th, 2023 at 3:04 p.m. Eastern time. Guys, if you want to support the show, click on the little red button. That's logos, get exclusive stuff, promo code Tommy, or go to the description, buy the merch, support the podcast. Fucking awesome book, dude. Fallen Angel. Fucking 2 thumbs up. Better than Luigi the Zip. Fucking fantastic.
Really? Wow.
And not that I don't like
You-
Luigi, it just actually riveted. Like I knew what was coming because you and I had talked about it before. I mean, even going back a year, but the delivery was still fantastic.
No, thank you. Thank you.
So
Thank you. And you had given me very, very high marks on Homicide is My Business too,
I
Luigi.
did. I did. This is better. Not that I don't like Luigi. Shout out Luigi, but this is fantastic. For everyone that doesn't know is we've covered the cases before in this book, but this is about the idea of an evil force behind them. And it is, it's a mixture of top secret government black ops work with a little bit of not Da Vinci Code, but a wholly good versus evil fight. And the very thing, and honestly, there's a lot of similarities between like fifth generation warfare, like sowing chaos in a society of go for these specific things, race baiting, a flourishing scene, truly destroy innocence, right? Like she's the best woman. There is a lot of validity to that, and it's whether you attribute it to the devil or a foreign power. I mean, both are foreign powers. I think you brilliantly tied it together, but I'll shut up and let you comment on it.
Oh, well, thank you very much, Tom. I appreciate it. And listen, I guess I should start by first of all, the book is called Fallen Angel, and I call it a true crime fantasy because the crimes that are depicted in the book and discussed in the book and have the centerpiece of each of the parts of the book are real are real events. They were crimes that happened in Brooklyn, and crimes that I handled either as investigations and trials or just simply investigations and then resulting in some guilty pleas. But the the way that I tied them together was because very quite frankly the suggestion of of several book agents. When I had finished Homicide is My Business, the Luigi book, I was stuck at that point. I didn't know what to write and where to go. And my writing partner Jerry Schmetter had passed away, and we had talked about doing something beyond Homicide is My Business, and then obviously that became moot because of his illness and death. And I had, and if I you can't see it, but if I look off to my left here, there are several boxes filled with files and my old summations, and they all represented, they all dealt with the cases that you read about in Fallen Angel and will read about in book 2, which
Mhm.
is now finished. I'm actually going to turn it in probably in the next day or two. So, but I called a couple of book agents and said, look, here was my idea. My idea was to basically do a book of short stories, true crime short stories. And they said, Mike, nobody who reads true crime likes to do it short story wise. They want to do a full, a
Mhm.
full novel. I'm sorry, not novel, a full book.
Yeah.
And so they said, find a way to tie all of them together. And if you can do that, well, then you've got something. So I had this idea, and I'll tell your listeners and viewers how the idea came about. Years ago, I investigated and prosecuted a former FBI agent for his ties to the mob, and to him in getting involved in tipping off a very notorious and vicious mobster to informants that were giving information about him, and he meaning the mobster would then would then kill them. And in the other side of the coin was that the mobster, unbeknownst to his fellow mafia members, was giving information about them to the FBI. So it was a kind of a tit for tat kind of thing. Um, I tried this guy because information came forward, and we indicted him for 4 of these murders. And in the middle of the trial, literally in the middle of the trial, a newspaper, the Village Voice, which doesn't exist anymore, came out with a story that said that one of the witnesses, in fact, the main witness that I had, the wife of the mobster, had years before, 10 years before, basically stuck up for the mobster and said, the allegations against him are untrue, and talked about how he was not the guy that people were saying he was, etc. And that destroyed the case, because at that point, my boss heard about it, read about it, and said, we can't go forward any longer. We have to just pull the case and dismiss it. Now, Tom, I took a lot of shit for indicting an FBI agent, and even though I was certain and that he had done the things that I indicted him for, the grand jury was certain, the witnesses I had were certain, we had to dismiss the case because of this one witness who basically started us off on this indictment path. So, the crap that I took was something that I didn't expect. And it didn't necessarily end with the end of the case, because he wrote a book criticizing me. He went on 60 Minutes and was interviewed, but did something which I was surprised that he did. He basically said and admitted to having this relationship with this mobster. And so I kind of was vindicated somewhat. But the stuff that, the crap that I took was just difficult to deal with at that point. I had done everything right, and I was being criticized as if I had done something wrong. And I sat down. Jerry Smeder and I used to go to lunch every day. We would talk, and we had this idea to write Crooked Brooklyn when we decided to leave the DA's office, which is what we did. And then after we wrote Crooked Brooklyn, we had this idea. Oh, actually, I shouldn't say that. Before we wrote Crooked Brooklyn, but as part of what we were planning to do after we left the office, we had this idea of kind of turning this whole situation around. And the idea was that the prosecutor in our story would become the pariah in the law enforcement community, not because he just simply indicted the FBI agent, but he won, that he beat him, and the FBI agent now went to jail. And that made the prosecutor, a black sheep, and nobody wanted to have anything to do with him. And we came up with this idea of what would he do with his life now as a prosecutor, as a lawyer, and this whole idea of a secret government agency approaching him because the devil had come to Brooklyn, and they knew that this was a prosecutor who had the guts and the balls to take on very difficult cases. And they approached them, and he became the kind of the good in the good versus evil part of the story. And we did a proposal for TV, and we wrote it all out. Not this book, but the idea, and it didn't go anywhere. As often happens with television, you got to hit it at the right time, and it didn't go anywhere. So after all of these years, and after these book agents telling me I needed to tie things together, I looked over at my pile of boxes here, and I said, man, you know what? I've got Fallen Angel in there. That was the name that we had taken for 2 reasons. One, the prosecutor was now a pariah, so he was a fallen angel. And obviously, Satan is known as the fallen angel. So it was perfect, we thought. And I pulled it out, and I started to read it, and I said, this could work. Now, the first couple of book agents I went to said, nah, I don't know. It's a little far-fetched. I don't know if I can sell it. I had done some work with a publisher out here on Long Island, not far from where I live. And she had me on TV with her TV shows for Homicide Is My Business, later for Crooked Brooklyn, for Friends of the Family. And I called her, and I said, her name was Stephanie Larkin. And I said, Stephanie, I got this idea. Can I tell you about it? She said, come meet. So I went out and met her, and I told her the story. And she said, boy, I like this. I think this, let me talk to, you got a proposal? And I did. I had a proposal. I had done the whole thing. And she said, send it to me and I'm going to run it past my editors. Well, a few days later, I got a call back and she says to me, not only do I love it, but my editors love it. So we're going to do it. She said, I'm going to send you a contract. And Mike, I have to tell you, do not end this story after book 1, because my contract is for book 2 and 3. It's the kind of thing that should be a series. And I had almost the entire book 1 written by that point, Tom. And so I did it. And I called it, I had this whole thing in my head from when I first thought about this, about calling it a true crime fantasy, because it allowed me to take my stories and to expand them or mold them in a way that would fit within the narrative or in the overarching narrative of this concept, which was good versus evil, the devil versus the good that's in Brooklyn. And I took Brooklyn, obviously, because I know it and I worked there and the cases were in Brooklyn. But Brooklyn has become a lot different than when I grew up. It's there's a lot of new residents who've come in. The neighborhoods that were really bad at one point have now been gentrified, and Brooklyn has become a place, a destination place for particularly young millennials and a little older to live here. And life here life there is very good. So I figured, what better place for the devil to come? And it was perfect because obviously all my cases were Brooklyn cases, and try to destroy this
beautiful
kind of idyllic
thing.
Yeah,
Yeah.
right.
Perversion of innocence.
Correct. And then I started writing, and I came up with the concept, which was not in our story, about where do I begin? And I got this idea about the Vatican's Office of Exorcisms, and that a particular priest who was in the office, who was now stationed in New York, was a guy who, kind of studied history and studied, what was going on in the world. And he came up he realized that there was a lot of upheaval in Brooklyn, a lot of horrible cases happening. And he went further and he expanded it to the United States and found them there too. And then he went further and he found that there were lots of these horrific cases in other parts of the world. And what made them attractive to him was that following the cases and shouldn't say that, the crimes, there was an increase in exorcisms of the people who had been arrested and charged with these crimes. That was my concept. And his opinion and his conclusion was that it was Satan that was behind all of this upheaval in these various parts of the world. And why was he being successful? Because no one recognized it. And he was allowed, or it was allowed, depending upon what you want to call him. I call him he, but he was allowed to kind of instigate, create these problems and create these crimes and get people to commit the crimes with his backing. And then when there was an arrest, how Satan would win is by making sure that the person arrested was not punished or convicted, and he would undermine the trial. He would have evidence disappear. He would have the prosecutor, something happened to the prosecutor. He would have witnesses killed and that kind of thing. And he was successful. So when he came to Brooklyn and this was happening, this priest recognized that he had to bring this to someone's attention. And this is the beginning of Fallen Angel, the book, the way I set it up. And he goes first to the Vatican's Office of Exorcisms in Vatican City and brings his theory to them. And the cardinal in charge says, you have something here. And he goes to the Pope. The Pope also agrees. And they say, you got to take this to the United States. And a high-level meeting between the Vatican and ultimately the Attorney General here in the United States is held. And this priest sells this idea and convinces the Attorney General that there's something here. And he goes to the president, and the president agrees. So now we've got all of the big shots agreeing. They now have to come up with a plan. And the plan was to create this super secret organization that would act would support a prosecutor in local jurisdictions throughout the United States where they believed the devil was operating. And because I can't talk about Des Moines, Iowa, I have to talk about Brooklyn. Brooklyn was the place where it was happening. It was ground zero at that particular time of my story. So they now needed somebody who knew Brooklyn to choose the prosecutor. And they came up with someone who had been an exorcist and had left the office and was now in New York. And he and grew up, born and raised and grew up in Brooklyn. And he had someone in mind. They went to him and said, pick somebody because you know the borough. And he had someone in mind. And it was his lifelong friend, a prosecutor named Michael Gioca, who had just finished convicting an FBI agent and was on the outs with law enforcement. So what they did was they watched him. He didn't know anything about this. He was kind of on the balls of his ass in terms of his career.
Mm-hmm.
And he needed something that was going to bring him back into the good graces of the law enforcement community. And this horrific murder occurs in Brooklyn, believe it or not, according to him, and in real life too, happens on the block where Michael Gioca was born, played stickball, etc., with kids. And this case actually happened. And when it happened in Brooklyn, I saw the address where it occurred. And I said to my boss, I was not in charge of homicide at that time. And I was not doing homicide cases. I was in charge of all of the trials in the office. But the murder cases in the Brooklyn DA's office were handled by another bureau. And I went to my boss and said, you know what? If there's an arrest in this case, I want it. I want the case because I grew up there. That's my old neighborhood. And it just hit home.
Mm-hmm.
And it was, and that was how so this case now comes to the attention of the prosecutor in my book, Michael Gioca, and he does the same thing as I did, which is to go to the DA and say, I want this case. DA is somewhat in the book is reluctant to give it to him because Michael has made his life difficult.
Blacklisted himself.
Yeah, he convicted this Fed. The federal government and the DA are, have this agreement or in this arrangement where the DA is going to get money and, on a regular basis. And he feels that convicting this heavyweight Fed was going to hurt him politically as well as economically in terms of the office. So, but he reluctantly gives it to Michael and he says, it's okay. You can have it. I think he thinks that this is going to be the last nail in the coffin because the case was very weak. It was a very weak case. There were no witnesses, none. And in real life, there were none. So I'll tell you the real life story, and you may remember this from Crooked Brooklyn. It was the Amy Watkins case. Mm-hmm. And basically the story is that this young woman from St. Louis, Missouri, came to New York, was accepted into Columbia University School of Social Work she wanted her master's in social work. And while she was living in Brooklyn, which is where she could find an apartment that was cheap enough for her to afford, she was working in the Bronx, in a homeless, actually a battered woman's shelter. And she felt that working there was great experience for what she would be doing as a social worker. The problem was that it was at about an hour subway ride away from her home. So every night when she left the Bronx, she had to get on the subway in not a very good time here in New York in real life. It was the crime rate was up, the murder rate was up, and she got on the subway, came to Brooklyn every night. This one particular night, she went into a delicatessen, a deli, a grocery store to buy some food and some milk and things of that nature that she needed. And there was someone in there who saw her and saw that she had some money and he was a junkie. And he followed her out of the store and he had two accomplices with him outside the store. And they watched as she walked down to her apartment. Now it's March. It's about 10, 11 o'clock at night when this happened. It was very, very dark. There were street lights on the street were not necessarily working, and she had to get from, I don't know, let's say 50 to 100 yards from where she bought the stuff, maybe 200 yards to her apartment, right? Well, he was able to get to her, and his two accomplices surrounded her. The main guy attempts to steal her purse, and she puts up a fight. The other guys start tussling with her. The main guy is now can't get the purse away from her, and he takes out this very large butcher knife, and he sticks it in her back. It was driven in so hard, Tom, that it came out the front of her body under her left breast. And they grab the purse and they take off. There's nobody. When she was screaming, that's when people looked out the window, but it was so dark that nobody could give us no one could give us a description other than it was three men. So and that's the same story in the Gioca case in the book, except that when Michael Gioca, the character in the book, gets the case and learns about the visit to the deli, he goes to the deli and he's expecting to find the deli counterman is described to him by it was at this point in the book, one of the people is caught and he's confessed. And it's described to him as a white guy, tall, longish hair, some other description. And his name is Tony, I think, is the name of the book. I think that was the name I used. So my guy in the book, Michael, goes and he wants to talk to Tony and find out what he knows. And he goes to the deli and he walks in and he looks at the counter man, and it's an Asian man.
Yeah.
And he says to him, talks to him, and he says, who's Tony, etc. The Asian guy looks at him like he's crazy. He said,
I got to interrupt. This is the one question I do have about the book. So
yeah,
for everyone, when the devil appears, he's obviously kind of shapeshifter, takes different shapes, and then gone without a trace, and no one knows. My question with this, in terms of just continuity, is this is the only time it seems that he replaced someone who actually exists. Like in the other, and I'm not going to spoil it for people, but in all the other cases, it's this person that appears and then it's gone, but you're in a city, so it's whatever. There's 10 million fucking people. Okay. This is the only time where he replaces an existing person.
Right.
That's what I want to ask you. That's my own OCD is, what was the Asian guy out back? Was he, or is it like a possession thing? Not to put you on the spot, but that's just my own. I did make a note of that.
Okay. Well, I guess the way that I envisioned writing the devil character was that there was nothing that was out of bounds. Mm-hmm. He could replace someone who actually exists, or he could be someone who doesn't exist and shows up in a particular place. That's how I envisioned it. And that's why in this situation, when Michael goes to meet or to interview the guy at the deli counter, and the real owner, Mr. Lee, says, there's nobody like that who works here. Me or my son work on this.
Gotcha.
And Michael at this point has no clue. Keep in mind, guys,
this is before
Michael is as in the dark, so to speak, about the devil at this point in the story as everybody else is, and he has no clue. He just can't figure out what this means. How does there one guy there one night and not someone, and then someone different the next time? So he basically he doesn't have any way of rationalizing this in his mind. He just takes it for what it is. I'll skip ahead because I can't go in detail and I don't want to spoil it for the kids. But Michael is, in addition to being a prosecutor, is also a teacher. He teaches in law school, and he's teaching. He convicts for the murder of this young woman, and he's at school, and even though he believes that being successful in this case will get him back into the good graces of everybody in his office, because the woman was written about in the daily newspapers as, you know, an angel. She helped people. She was a college student, a graduate student looking to become a social worker, and the work that she did. Her father was a lovely guy. I mean, it was written. And in real life, Giuliani was the mayor at the time, and he called her an angel at the funeral. He said, "We lost, you know, an angel," and that was also fit perfectly into my scenario about, you know, the calling him that, etc. So when he convicts, when there's a result in the book that is favorable, Michael thinks, I'm going to walk back into my office and everybody's going to love me now because I was able to convict the guy who killed the angel, right? Well, it doesn't work out that way. And they still think that he's a piece of crap because he convicted this FBI agent, etc. And he goes to school that night to teach, the night of the verdict. And his kids in his class are all different. They give him a standing ovation. They know what he did, etc. So he's kind of buoyed by it. And when he leaves the school, he's met by the dean of the school, and the dean talks to him and says that, you know, she's ill, and that he's been at that school for so long. She likes him. She knows how hard he works and how successful he was. And she's going to submit his name to the board of trustees as her replacement to become dean of the law school. Michael said, and she says to him, and I know how those people over in the DA's office are treating you. They're treating you like shit.
Yeah, you're doing the right thing, buttering
you know, you're doing the right thing. You leave, and you'll become dean of the law school. He's happy as hell. He said, "This is my way out. Now I can do this, teach. I can, you know, my kids love me. People here in the school know that I'm a hard worker and know that I'm successful. This is a great idea. Great thing for him." So he gets into he tells her that, let me think about it, and I'll call you in the morning, but I'm going to tell you now that unless things change very drastically, I'm going to take this, essentially, is what he tells her. So he gets into his car, drives home, and he gets to his apartment building, and he lives in a section of Brooklyn that the apartments were 3 or 4 stories, and they had what we call in Brooklyn stoops. There were a set of steps down the front of them, and he walks up to his building, and he sees somebody he recognizes, and it's his old buddy Sal Romano, who now is a Monsignor in the church. Now Sal Romano is the person that the secret agency recruited to find the prosecutor in Brooklyn and to become his liaison when they find him. He was the guy that was in the office of exorcisms at one point, and he had done exorcisms, etc. So Michael walks up to him, but he hadn't seen him in so long because he went off to be a priest, and Michael went off to law school, and they you know, never the twain shall meet during those years. And he says, "Sal, what are you doing here?" And he tells Michael that he wants to speak to him. He's got something very important, and asks him to come with him to a meeting. And they go off to a building in the Red Hook section of Brooklyn. And for your listeners and viewers who don't know, Red Hook is essentially if you look at the map, it does look like a hook, that kind of piece of land that kind of juts out into the East River and New York Harbor. And it's kind of isolated, and it's a very industrial area, although now there are people who live there. There are apartment buildings, etc. So it's an area where you would have the headquarters of a secret organization, away from the madding crowd and away from, you know, prying eyes, etc. So that's where this organization's headquarters were, and Romano is taking Michael to a meeting, and Michael has no idea where he's going, why he's going, and he introduces him, goes into this place, into this building, and I tried to describe it as best I could as a place that actually I had been in once with an investigator when I was in charge of the rackets division. I had a case, and we were looking for someone, and and it was the task force, a joint federal, state, city task force that was a fugitive task force, was headquartered in this place. And we were looking for somebody, and I forgot who it was. And one of my investigators said, we're going to meet one of those investigators. We got to go down to Red Hook and go meet him. We walk into, I walk into this building, Tom. I don't know if I wrote about this in Crooked Brooklyn, but I walk into this building, go up to this floor, whatever it was, 4th floor, 5th floor. And I get off the elevator and I look to my left and look to my right. There is not a door in sight. It's just this long corridor all the way down with, fluorescent lights. And I said, what the hell is this? Where are we going?
It's like a scene out of Goodfellas. You're about to walk into the room. Oh, fuck.
Boom. Yeah. The investigator says to me, his name was George. He said, Mike, we're going down this way. I'm walking down the hall. Now I'm passing, I'm walking down this long corridor, still no door. We get to this particular spot and the wall opens. The door and the wall were flush. You couldn't tell.
Yeah.
Opens, we go in, and it was their headquarters. So I tried to make it similar to that in the story, although the Romano's office in my story is kind of in the basement, and it's it's not like the former AG's office, because the head of this organization was a former Attorney General of the United States. I name him John Caldwell.
Yeah.
So they go in and talk to Caldwell, and basically the book is set up from that point. Caldwell explains to Michael why he's there, who this organization is, what they're after, and they say, we have been watching you. And Michael is now upset, quite frankly, in the beginning. What do you mean you're watching me? Basically, we learned from Monsignor Romano that he was the guy, you were the guy he wanted, and we needed to see how you operated. And by the way, the case that you just did with the woman who was stabbed by the guy who wasn't there, that was the devil. That was Satan. He was behind it. That guy at the deli, that was your adversary now. That guy was, he disappears because that's the way he does it. He kind of instigates and drops into people's minds what they should do. And he instigated the killing of this woman by the junkie, because she was what she was. She was this wonderful, angelic-like social worker who everybody loved. All of her family loved her. Her friends loved her. And it was a perfect person for the devil to eliminate, because of the turmoil and the upset and the people in the city becoming frightened. Young women were frightened because it was a case in which some young girl was walking down the street with no one around, and she's set upon, and the next thing she knows, she's dead. And that set off a lot of, made a lot of women nervous. That was the kind of thing that the devil wanted to do. He wanted to create this stuff, and she was the perfect target for him. Michael is now in the book is like, wow. They say, do you want the job? And I think I write that he's not so certain immediately. He's got 2 kids. He's divorced. He's got his father he's got to take care of. But then he says to himself, if my dad learned that I had this opportunity to take on the great evil and I didn't do it.
And your dad being a guy in the book that goes to mass every Sunday.
Correct.
I laughed out loud. I think my dad would be disappointed and my kids would think I'm a pussy.
Yeah.
I actually laughed out loud. I was like,
that's exactly what I wrote.
Yeah.
So he says, I'll take it. But then he still has to deal with something. And he says to Caldwell, but what do you mean you watched me? And Caldwell has to admit, he said, look, we had to figure out whether or not you were the person for this. And Romano later on tells him, when he questions it again, Romano says, look, Mike, you're not from DC. You're up here. These guys are DC regulars. You convicted one of their own. You needed to be not 100%. You needed to be 110%, right, before they would have accepted you for this particular job. And you passed it. You passed you passed with flying colors. One of the things that they liked And I remember this from when I did it because I was uncertain as to whether I should. I knew I wanted to, but I was uncertain as to whether or not I could get away with it in a courtroom when I did this trial. I had a picture of the victim. Her name was Amy Watkins, and it was a lovely picture of her. She was in the smiling, vivacious. I mean, just she was just such a good woman and just very happy in this picture. And then I had another picture of her in the morgue, on the slab in the morgue, with this huge hole in the back of her, in her back, where the knife had been driven through. And what I said at the trial was that the defendant should be convicted. I said it to the jury, should be convicted because he turned this, and I held up the picture of her smiling, into this, which was the lab, her laying on the slab in the morgue. I got away with it. Judge didn't shoot me down, didn't shut me down, didn't do anything. And I said, this is great. And I thought it was the kind of moment that I needed to pull in order to get this case done, because there was some issues with it. Remember, no witnesses. Okay, this guy confessed, but he later took back the confession. So I had to convince the jury that the confession was the truth, and that his testimony on the witness stand, in which he said, we forced them into it, all the rest of the crap, was not true. And I did. So apparently, what I wrote in the book was that was Romano saying to the Michael Gioca character, they were particularly impressed by what they called the courtroom drama theater, which is the whole thing with the photographs. So obviously Michael accepts the position, and I'm going to tell your readers this, but I want to say, if you don't want to hear this, then you want to be surprised, then cover your ears for a moment. But I think you should. I want to talk about it. So he accepts the position. And then he says, oh man, I just told the dean a few hours ago that I would accept the position as dean of the law school. So I've got to call her up and tell her that I can't take it. So he does. And he gets on the phone and she says, are you okay? He goes, yeah, why wouldn't I be? She says, well, first of all, it's 11 o'clock at night. I was just about to go to sleep.
Yeah.
You don't usually call me at this point. What's going on? And he says, well, I want to know, how are you? How are you? I know you're sick, and it's pretty serious, and I don't want to upset you, but I got to tell you something. She says, what are you talking about? I'm not sick. I'm not leaving my position at the law school. I'm fine. He then says, oh, okay. I guess, essentially, my bad. I don't know what came over me. He hangs up.
Yeah.
Romano tells him, well, starts to chuckle. When he hears it, he heard what she said.
Well,
and he said, Michael.
She also says on the phone, I never spoke to you.
Yeah, I never spoke to you.
Not just that we spoke in this conversation, is you took it the wrong way. I haven't seen you recently.
Correct. And Romano says, I know who that was. That wasn't the dean. That was him. And in the book, I always refer to the devil with either him, he, his, and I always make it capital letters and I italicize it so that the reader knows what we're talking about. And he said what he did was he wanted to humiliate you. He knew what we were going to do tonight, and he knows how good you are. He doesn't want you as his adversary. So he figures he tempted you, hoping that you would take it. And then once we came, he also made sure that you were humiliated, and perhaps humiliated to the point where you were just going to go into a shell and not necessarily take anything. It didn't work. Right, Michael? And Michael says, no, it didn't. But now he realizes what he's up against, and we're off to the races. He passed the test, and he then quickly thereafter gets his first case. And I don't believe, Tom, that the one that I used as the first case, other than the Amy Watkins case, I wrote about anywhere, and that was the murder of this young police officer
Yeah,
who
I didn't recognize it from any
no, I
of your
didn't. I never
talks.
wrote that. I do have a short story that I was going to publish, but I held off doing that because I wanted to include it in the book. And do we have a little time to talk about it, or do you want to save that for we can talk a little bit more about the book in general rather than get into the specifics of the
I say s-
each of the cases.
I say save that and we'll divide it up like we did with
Luigi.
homicide is my
Yeah,
business. But
yeah.
no, let's still talk for like another 10 minutes or so about
Oh
it.
yeah,
So
yeah, 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 yeah.
what I liked about this is it's often the idea of, you know, the carrot or the stick, like the threat, you know. And in many ways you go into it as at the very foremost, it's like, well, if you just think about it rationally, it's like, why would the devil give a shit about any of this? You know, if you're the devil, you would just do 9/11, right? You would just start a war, right? And the idea is that, well, the devil's been here for eternity. He's done it all. He takes great pleasure in perverting, right? It's not as simple enough to just set a bomb off. He wants to turn people against each other. He's got endless, you know, endless desire for it, endless lust for it. So he's never backing down from the fight. This is how he gets off. It's like a sick fuck serial
Correct.
killer. And so that just as, you know, first and foremost is like, why, you know, why wouldn't he just start a nuclear war? And that's too easy. He likes it. Um, but what I also like about it is if you were in that position, you wouldn't just utilize threats, right? You wouldn't just think of every possession movie, Exorcist. It's always, you know, you see a demon somewhere and it's you jump scare. What I liked about this is there are different weapons. It's also it's preying on not your fears but your weaknesses, right? So it's like you do the right thing, you know, you did the right thing, you're getting blacklisted by all your coworkers, but your dad's proud of you, your sons are proud of you. You go and then the students are clapping for you and you're like, I know I did the right thing, I don't care what anyone else says. And the devil knows that. And so the devil not only plays on with just seduction, here's a nice job, here's status, but it's also plays, hey man, you did the right thing. You between you and I, like you both know you did the right thing. And you know what? God's rewarding you kind of. You be the dean. And you're going, I'm the fucking dean. So not only does it sort of play on like the ego, like, oh, I'm gonna be something better, it's also like, hey, dude, fuck these people. And that I think is more intricate than just, you know, you're walking home and your car blows up or something like right before you
Oh
get
yeah, yeah,
home.
yeah.
It's
I
much more
don't.
intricate than like you go
The
home and your house burned down. So
the only yes, I agree. The only time that there were, first of all, I want to say that you hit it right on the head. What the three stories that come after this one that I just described all have at their center is that the devil's instigation was to foment um, uh, chaos, so to speak, and the rioting,
mhm.
the blaming of in the first one where the police officer is killed. There's still the idea that he's a hero in his neighborhood, which is an African American, Caribbean American neighborhood, and the people there are saying that it was the devil puts out word that it was other cops
Mm.
who killed this black cop because he was in the wrong place at the wrong time, was riding this very big motorcycle, etc. So that created all kinds of foment. The second one is where the cop is drunk and he runs over and kills a young woman and her kids and some kids, and that also creates a problem with the police. And there's rioting and demonstration so what you're saying is that I think that is the devil had a long game, that it wasn't just okay, let's blow up the twin towers and then it that event is over. This is the kind of thing that all of these things were created and done so that they would the undercurrent, the negative undercurrent against either society or police or the courts stayed for as long as possible. And then when it ended, because Michael was successful, he does another thing which kind of creates the last thing. The last story is he attacks this person on the Williamsburg Bridge, this young Jewish woman, and foments all of this unrest in the Jewish community, goes after the the whole religious thing. And in book 2, I have he basically is out to destroy families in Brooklyn, and each of the crimes is the center of the crime of the person who's victimized is the center of a family, and that was his point. Kill this person, the family falls apart, and he's more successful if he could get the more families destroyed in Brooklyn. So you hit it right on the head. It was not. It's a long game for the devil. It's not blowing up a car and and a guy gets killed and suddenly people say, oh, it's that's horrific, and then tomorrow or the next day, well, they move on to something else. This is his idea was to create lasting problems, things that would last for a long time, and ultimately pick away at the the fabric of society in Brooklyn, and hopefully then move on to to other parts of the United States. But obviously my book is centered here, and that's what my idea was, and I wanted to use the cases. Luckily, I was able to shape the cases in a way that would tell that story, and you'll see. Michael has some setbacks, in the book, and there are things and there are some threats also that when the devil, I think, feels that he's not getting anywhere by hurting people around him, he goes directly for his family. So that's so the idea is that he was looking to win in the long run rather than to just simply, as you said, blow up a car and and hurt or kill 3 people, and then again, the way life is in New York, 2 days, 3 days later, people forget about it. They move on to something else, So
yeah, they want the more. He wants the more. Again, it's the mind of like a serial killer. It's not enough that it's why when you hear like the rare cases where a victim escapes a serial killer, like they could, like, if they're kept captive or something, it's like they could have killed you. They're well, there's no other way to say it. They're sick fucks. They
yeah,
want to. They're playing with their food. That's what they get off on. It's too simple to just go kill someone. They want
right.
something more out of it, right? That's what they go after, and it's even in kind of biblical terms, or like the Exorcism of Emily Rose, that movie, which is terrifying. I watched that movie by myself in a frat house in 2010 on a pot brownie. I don't know why I did that. Those were the dumbest things I've ever done in my life. Everyone was gone for the weekend. It was some football. I don't know why I still don't know why I did that. But I do remember the scene where like it's the very end and the priest is saying like name yourself demons, and she's in the farm and all the animals are going crazy. And she finally goes like, basically names all the different demons that are in her. But
Yeah,
but there's like historical parts. She's like, I am Nero, like the one who burned Rome. Like I was in Cain and Abel, like original sin. Like I
right.
am whatever. I was in this snake and Adam and Eve. And then I was in, and I want to say there's something with do with Nazi Germany. I might be wrong. And then like I am Judas. I am the one that betrayed. And then finally I am Lucifer in the flesh. But the whole thing is like all these great evils in history was all these temptations of man, and that's
Right.
what because the devil's around for eternity. He doesn't want the simple win, and that's again, I mean, if he wanted to, yeah, he'd set off a nuke, but that's not the same. It's
Well, that's that was a lot of that is what I used or had in my head when I was got the idea first of all, and then when I started to flesh it out and write it, and it was fortunate that the cases that I had were horrific enough to be able to fit into into my scenario, and this one with this young woman. I'm sure that there are people, I'm sure that the people who are listening have no recollection of this, but it was in New York. It was a big deal. It was
yeah,
really a big deal because because of Giuliani and because of the way that he portrayed her, and the sense was that this was a completely innocent person who was randomly chosen and that scared a lot of young women, and it didn't get solved for an entire year, Tom, an entire year. And I remember when they finally made the arrest, and I went to the precinct, and I had to I didn't take the statements from the guy confessed, but I didn't take it because I was trying the case, and if I took the statement, I would have to testify, which wouldn't allow me to try it. So the head of the homicide bureau at the time was a buddy of mine. He took the statements, and we went there, and it worked out perfectly when I tried it. And I got to tell you this little story, the true story. When he confessed, it was I guess when he made the arrest, it was summertime, and we were in this precinct in a very busy section of Brooklyn. And there was like two windows in the room where the confession was taken, where they were interviewing this guy, the interrogation room. But they were not windows that went, double-sided windows. They were at the top of the wall, and they opened up, kind of swung out, small windows, probably about maybe about this big. So and it was probably like 3 o'clock in the afternoon, maybe 4 o'clock in the afternoon, on a beautiful sunny day. It was a summer day. There were a lot of kids out playing on the street, a lot of people. So there was some noise, and the confession was solid. It was, he told us everything. He was right on the money. He had left New York and had cut his hair because he knew that people were looking for him. There might have been, there was a whole host of things that were great in the confession. When the confession was played, when I asked the prosecutor who took the confession on the witness stand all about it, and then I played it for the jury, the videotape, you could hear in the background, kids. I didn't think anything of it.
Yeah, and
the defense attorney made his defense was that the police and the DA's office were harming this defendant's young son, who happened to be there with his mother in the precinct. And that forced him into confessing.
Yeah, the kid was down the hall or something getting punched.
Right. And it had nothing to do with the kid. It was the noise on outside. That was one of the things that kind of stuck with me. And I think I you read the book a lot more recent than I did. I think I mentioned something about it in the confession. Do I not? About the kid and the noise? Yeah. And I write it in such a way. Anytime I could throw the devil, or manipulation, or something into it. Yeah, that I would do that, and that was one of the ways that I did it. So, I'm very pleased with with the way this thing came out, and I sent it to. I gave the book. I told my manager, who I have a guy in Hollywood who has taken my stuff and is trying to sell it and has done some success with it. I told him about the book, and he said, "Get it to me. Get it to me as soon as you can." So when I finished it, I sent him the digital copy of it, and he read it. He gave it to a writer who has written for TV, a guy. I don't know if you're familiar with the show Mayans and Sons of Anarchy and The Sinner, which is another thing with Bill Pullman. So he's written for these shows, and he's really he really is a good writer and successful, and he comes from Brooklyn, so it was perfect. My manager said, "This guy would be perfect if he's interested in this. We can sell it." The guy, Tom, I got to tell you, the guy loved it. They loved it. So I've optioned it. So it's now on the market, and there's supposed to be a writer's strike in Hollywood. So they're kind of holding things back, but it's all ready to be taken out into the marketplace to sell. And he has done some things with it that, for television, he's kind of enhanced the things and he's made it a little bit more spooky. Mine is more like is a more of a crime book than a spooky book or a horror book, but he's kind of added a little bit more of the horror aspect to it, and it's great. So I'm keeping my fingers crossed that we sell it, and if we do, we're looking for a couple of seasons, hopefully, because he's got this whole idea, and I won't tell you about it because I don't want to jinx myself, that I don't want to say something that might spoil it, but he's got this great idea as to how to deal how to handle the whole devil concept, and it's terrific. So we'll see. And I think that if you do have me back, and I hopefully you will, we can talk about the next case involving that young police officer who was killed, because there were aspects of that case that still boggle my mind. I still can't believe that what happened in terms of the trial and the way that the jury reacted and things of that nature. But I'll save it for the next time. But
Well,
good.
I was gonna say, well, yeah, we'll do it next time, just like we did with Homicide is My Business, and the link to the book is in the description, as well as the other one's Crooked Brooklyn, Homicide is My Business. But yeah, no, I genuinely like it. And
Thank you.
always,
Thank you.
as always, full disclosure, everyone, I don't get a penny from Mike. I don't know Mike shit. Mike doesn't owe me shit. I have him on because I like the books, and I push a book if I genuinely like it. It's a good read, and it's I think it's applicable to. It helps for me. It also kind of helps look at the world certain ways, where is it evil? Is it just assholes? But if you can define an evil, you can also define a good. And it makes you feel like if you're doing the right thing, you're not just doing the right thing for no purpose. You can go, I'm doing the right thing, and someone wants me to not do that. That's how I often try to
exactly. I got to tell you something on that, in that vein. There was a woman who's a court reporter, and the stenographer in the courtroom, who I knew. I knew when I was working, and I didn't know her. I mean, she wasn't a friend or anything. I just knew she was. So she picked up the book. First of all, she read Homicide is My Business and loved it. And when this one came out, she sent me a review, what I'll call a review, that she posted online. Apparently, her son, she wasn't married. She has this kid who was I think a teenager, maybe a little older, passed away. And she told me in this review that she hadn't read anything. I think she read this before she read Homicide is My Business, now that I think about it. She hadn't read anything. She hadn't had the desire. She was always a reader. She hadn't had anything because she was basically so adversely affected by this death of her son that she just, kind of went into a shell.
Yeah.
She found out about the book. She picked it up, and she said she couldn't put it down. She said it essentially got me back into life again, reading this thing. And she thanked me in this little review for providing this diversion and this way of kind of getting her out of the headspace that she was in as a result of her son dying. I have used it. I'm trying to sell the book, so I've posted it, and the reaction that I've gotten from this little review, it's like 5 lines, Tom, is terrific. So, and I've gotten also good reviews from other people who are not friends of mine, who I don't know, who send me stuff online, and say it's terrific. It's as you said, I loved it. I loved it from beginning to end, and I can't tell you how much that means to me when people tell me that, because when you write and you do these things, you say to yourself, I don't know, is this good enough? Is that, there's always self-doubt, particularly with writers. And so it's very important to have people tell you what they think about it, even if it's a bad thing, because even if the review is bad,
elicits a response
of improving, okay, I won't do this way again, that kind of thing. So, so I hope that and by the way, one other thing, in fact, when I get off the phone, I have to reach out to the publisher. I have to ask her, this is supposed to become an audiobook. And in addition to Kindle and the digital book, as well as the paper copy, they want me to do the reading, to be the
about time.
Yeah. So I think I'm going, I told her I would do it, her meaning the lady who owns the publishing company. So, So we'll see. Maybe by the next time I'll be able to tell you that I'm in the midst of doing it or I'm going to do it. So that's it. And again, I thank you. I thank you for having me on today, and I thank you for the
Of
really kind
course.
words about the book.
Absolutely. No, it was I genuinely enjoyed it, man. It was a good read, and kind of on that, you know, note about, obviously, like, I'm very open about everything in my life. Last week sucked, and one of the huge things about kind of depression isn't, it's not what you think it is, and or at least for me, it's not overarching sadness, it's a flatness. It's not, because sadness is still a feeling. There's still
Yeah,
something there, right?
yeah, yeah,
After a breakup, you get hammered, listen to a sad song, there's still something there. Depression's just somebody turns down the color in life, and you're just kind of food, everything just tastes like pudding. You're just,
exactly.
and coming out of that in the last week in myself is reading this book helped. Now, full disclosure, I'm not going to say this is some fucking snake oil book and it's gonna cure your life. I don't mean that,
No,
but
no,
just
no.
along the same lines is like it's always good. A lot of, I've done interviews on here that I get a lot of hate for, and it does mean something when you'll have on a doctor or someone be like, hey man, like you did the right thing. It always does. It always does help. And it also helps when, and maybe it's just placebo effect or not. It also helps when you can put a face on something. You're like, it's not just that it's difficult. It's like it's evil. There's like an evil, and it does help to sort of, maybe that's just like the
Yeah,
male in me, but it helps to look at someone and be like, no, fuck that guy. Like for me, whenever I was studying in college, it wasn't just like I want to get a better grade. I would always just imagine someone doing much better than me and flaunting it. And it would be like, fuck that guy. And is that the best mindset? I don't know, probably not, but it helps push me forward. So that's kind of one of the things I got from this. It's not just do the right thing. It's like you look at the devil and you're like, dude, fuck that guy. Fuck that guy. It's a
yeah.
nerd. Go give him a wedgie. Fuck that guy. So, um, but on that,
And that evil can be overcome as well, which is one of the things that Michael does in this book, is that there's no reason to just throw your hands up and bury your head in the sand and say I can't live because evil is in this world. There is a way to overcome it, and it's just a matter of finding the way to do it. And
yeah, and
he does it.
the devil doesn't just, you could say, oh, I don't want to fight the devil, he's going to kill me. Well, he clearly doesn't. And again, that's too easy. The devil wants to, he wants your
Precisely,
own free will. It wants you to bend. And that's,
precisely.
so in that
You
case,
know,
you just got to go do the right thing. If he's going to kill you, he's going to kill you. It's the fucking devil. You can't, or whatever. Plant your feet and do the right thing. And that's where the battle is.
one of the not criticisms but comments that a friend of mine said to me before I began writing was, well, how could you write this? I mean, it's the devil. I mean, how could he'll just kill you, not you. I mean, he'll just kill Gioka and just that'll be the end of it. And I said, no, he won't. That's not what he's here to torment. He's here to foment, to foment and to make things. It's too easy for him if he kills him. He wants to win the battle. He wants to to tempt, and then he wants you to succumb to the temptation, and that is the win that he has. Killing is simple, as you just said. So
It's
that was also part of it, and I kept it in mind as I was writing this. What this guy said to me, and I, I can't. I'm not going to lie to you. I thought about it. I said, well, somebody going to buy this premise that this guy would be fighting and doing, and I thought more I thought to myself about it, more I said, yeah. I said, because if he could do that, well, then the world would be wiped out
it
already,
just would have,
right? The
it
world
would,
would be wiped out, So
it's
anyway, that was I'm happy. That was one of the criticisms or comments that, as I said before, helps a writer. You take it, and then you deal with it. And I was happy that he did it, obviously, or said that to me, because it did help me. So
Yeah, it kind of makes
um,
me think of, we'll wrap up on this note, but it makes me think of being in a fraternity and you're hazing pledges. The pledges think that you're going to cut them, which means you're fucking out of here. But the reality, the secret is like a pledge has to do something pretty egregious. I mean, they have to like literally break a
Absolutely.
law or like do a crime. And you're like, okay, then well now it's a liability. But the thing
Yep.
no, you don't ever want to cut a pledge. You want to make them quit, and
Yeah.
that's the whole thing. Is it's self? No one told you to leave. There's the front door,
That's
and
it.
that's like the sick pleasure of when you're like
Yep.
hazing the pledges. You're like, let's fucking break them. And then the upside is the ones that survive. It's like those are the ones that are worthy, and
Yeah.
it's the whole thing. But um, Mike, let's wrap this one up. The link to the book is in the description, and we'll definitely do a part two. And probably have to do several parts for this, and not have to get to. And
Good.
yeah, man,
Thank you very much,
looking
Tom.
forward to book two, dude.
Okay. It's
All
going to
right,
be, in fact, as soon as I get off the phone, I'm calling my publisher because I see she just called me. So I
hell
want
yeah,
to let her know that it's on its way. So
hell yeah,
we're hoping that it'll be out for beach read, for the summer so that people can
beautiful.
take it. Because I think it's a perfect kind of book to take to the beach.
Yeah,
It's,
think
you
about the
can lose
devil.
yourself in it. Yeah. Yeah.
All
So,
right,
all
Mike,
right, Tom.
let's wrap this one up. I'll
Thank
text
you.
you after the. I have a couple more podcasts. I'll text you after that. We'll schedule another one. And yeah, guys, go grab the book. Till next time, Mike.
Wonderful.